Good morning from a very, very hot and incredibly humid circuit, the Yeongam circuit in southwest Korea, ready for the first of our 4 qualifying sessions. The first 2 for the GT4 runners, and then the GT3 runners go out. And of course, they're setting the grid not just for this afternoon's race, but also for tomorrow. Brilliant circuit, lost in the mist of time in many ways, because it was last used in 2013 in terms of Formula One. Let's take a look at the Blancpain GT World Challenge calendar. The American Series on the left, the European Series in the middle, and the series we're interested in right now. We're at round 5 of the 6 at Yeongam in southern Korea, and it is a fabulous circuit, but a few cobwebs around the place because last used in international championship level in 2013. A brilliant circuit built just in the nick of the time for Korea to hold its first Grand Prix. I'm joined by Steve Dawson, in from the humidity outside, 63%. It feels more like 93%, but there were national warnings yesterday. Look at that track temperature, 47.8. Air temperature was 36 degrees, and it felt hotter yesterday. Everyone on their mobile phones suddenly had an emergency alert. There is no wind to cool you down, 0 km pH, 32 degrees air temperature right now. It was actually quite gentle last night at about 9 o'clock, Stephen, when you got back from the circuit, but it does keep rising. But what a great place to be. Look at this landscape around the circuit. Rolling hills, seaside, but it is all right now. It's about the humidity and the temperature, isn't it?
Some wonderful scenery, though, Bruce. As you say, the media centre isn't perched over the start-finish straight, which is rare on motor racing circuits around the world these days. Instead, we look after farmland, similar to what you just saw in that picture there, and a lovely lake. It's absolutely pristine, and then suddenly the roar of car engines. Well, that's what we see, pretty much what we see from the media centre there, those lovely rolling hills in the background, the farmland in the near part of your screen there.
And on the left,
bridge, yes.
Yeah, it's a bridge, but it's also, just beyond that, they have great big tidal gates as well as they control the water around the circuit. But and in between, in this rolling green landscape, huge industrial areas, very heavy industry. A lot, if you want a wing for your plane, this is the place to come. Huge ironworks and more, but this circuit was plopped down here because the idea was to create a whole motor industry, a holiday complex. In fact, at the background of the shot, top left, you can see the really unusual Korean bridge over the circuit, wonderful style. But beyond there, they were hoping for greater things. There was talk of a marina going in, sort of as you have at the Abu Dhabi circuit, of course, at Monaco as well, and Singapore pretty much alongside. That hasn't happened as yet. Doesn't look as though it will. The Grand Prix was last year in 2013. In fact, the journalists' names are still on the desks, and the peeling paintwork above the garage with names you'd forgotten were even in Formula One. Paul Max Chilton is peeled off, but
Mark Webber's still up there.
Number 2 he was, because of course it was back in the Red Bull days. Number 1, of course, was his teammate Sebastian Vettel. So the Formula One teams came here, didn't know what to expect. It was only just finished in time, but the circuit was a massive challenge, and that you'll see as the cars go out around the track. The long infield straight into that tight right-hand hairpin where much action happened when the full grid of cars was here last in 2013. I'll just shake an insect off the desk running across the commentary booth. But for the drivers here, it's a lot of space for them to go racing, and that's exactly what we want. But it's a very, very technical circuit. You're looking at the early part of the lap, and the GT4 runners getting ready to go out and play. 2 15-minute qualifying sessions, and that should be Kyo Chang, who for the second weekend running will be sharing that 199 Team iRace.win Mercedes with Zhou Qi from Taipei. So, but it's all Taipei driver pairing. There's that wonderful bridge. I do like it when you have a little bit of local culture applied to otherwise what could be a circuit dropped in anywhere. Yes, we've got the background of the rolling Korean hills, but national identity, hugely important, I think, and those that have it in spades really do stand out. In the background, you can see some of the cars just coming in, actually, from the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia qualifying session. But if you look at that metallic blue Mercedes in the background, that's one of ours. That's GTO Racing with TTR, and that should be Brian Lee. So that could be 2 racers from Taipei about to go out at the same time. I must say that's still my favourite livery. Doesn't look bad in any weather conditions, that metallic blue.
Bright sunshine of the weather conditions you've got today. Bruce, you were talking about how hot and humid it is, 0 wind. I mean, it's absolutely stifling. It's going to be very hard work for these drivers during the course of today. We've got the qualifying session and race 1 later on this Saturday, race 2 on the Sunday. And there might be a bit of rain in the air tomorrow, which might cause us a little bit of relief, but dodgy times for the drivers, perhaps.
Well, that's interesting. Just looking at the first car going out, there's actually a little almost like a curb they have to go to. See the line just past the cone on the left of your screen. Look at number 77, the Craft Bamboo car, ready, steady, bounce. Shake those fillings. So 3 Mercedes out onto the track, and that should be Frank Hugh sharing this weekend with Richard Wee, one of 3 drivers new to this year's championship. But Richard Wee from Singapore, born in very end of December in 1964, a mere spring chicken. He has competed in the championship both in 2017 and 2018, but running in GT4 as he did last year, where he raced for Clearwater Racing in a McLaren. But this time around, he is in the number 77, green, white and black Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, sharing with Frank Hugh. Frank generally shares with Jean-Marc Merlin, but the French driver missed the last round, missing this one as well.
A couple of Singaporeans in this session. Richard Wee, as you said. Also Ringo Chong for Team iRace.win. He's partnered by Setiawan Santoso, who is Indonesian, so representing Singapore in this early first session, or perhaps the second session. Let's see who gets in the cars.
Okay, they're sweeping past the other pits, and you should have 2 pit buildings around the circuit. There's one effectively after about turn 5, between 5 and 6. So here's Brian Lee starting to wind it up. It's you go on this circuit from long straights into tight hairpins, a short straight, and then it gets fiddly. I think that's the technical term. I was talking to Marcos Gomez, the Brazilian driver, who's turning up to race in the GT3 class, racing the Hub also Corsa Ferrari. His first sight of the circuit. For a lot of drivers, this is their first sighting of the career international circuit. And he said it's technical, but it's fun. Really, really enjoy it. And I said, how about the heat in the cockpit? And he sort of wiped his hand over his forehead and went, I guess it's the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Brazilian racer, obviously some races in Brazil can be quite humid, but it really is the fact you have national weather warnings just shows the heat plume that hit Europe, an equivalent is hitting here, certainly about 10 degrees hotter than had been expected. So that's another factor for all the drivers.
There's a familiar livery. We've seen BMW and enjoyed that livery over the past few weeks, and there it is again, the 81 car.
Well, that'd be Takayuki Kinoshita sharing with Sunako Jukucha, and they're just such a good pairing, not just because they're well balanced, they're both sort of pretty close to each other on stopwatch, but you go down to the garage and you see them up on the podium, they just love their racing, and it's infectious. It does seem to be the happiest camp in the whole of the paddock. And while the drivers here have plenty of space, 5 GT4 runners to get around the track, if you happen to have your lap ruined by another driver, you've really done something rather wrong. You've got to be able to make yourself space here, and there's plenty of space to play on this circuit. Again, surrounded most of the lap by concrete barriers right along the side of the circuit. This is the back half of the circuit, but going down towards effectively about turn 14. I've got to get on top of all these corner numbers, but for the drivers there's plenty of width, but they know if they go out too wide, there's concrete there to take care of them.
Well, you see those curves are taking quite a battering. They're not particularly well upkept in recent years, but certainly there's plenty of tyre marks on them, and they do go rather wide. There's 1 or 2 where they almost have all 4 wheels off the circuit, so watch for that.
So up into turn 8 past the national pits, hard left, come around, you can see almost feeds immediately into a right-hander, and then an even tighter left-hander at turn 10, and then the lap really starts to open up and find some form. Sweepers through turns 12, 13, 14, then harder braking for turn 15. But right now, Keo Chang just getting that number 199 wound up. Of course, this is the first flying lap. They've had the out lap. Now he's going through turn 13, turn 14, another left-hand kink, and then tightens up a little bit, and then suddenly down to turn 15. Bump, much sharper corner. Then you keep on going, and in fact it's like a long series of linking turns, and I say that because they're very similar, some maybe 10 degrees tighter than the others, and if you can get your car well balanced here, if you're not scrubbing off too much rubber from your front tyres, you're doing fine, you've got your balance. But then of course other parts of the circuit very different indeed. But right now, as we've seen all along, there is track width, but it's very hard to do your passing, so qualifying super important for the drivers here. Braking hard towards the end of the lap, it tightens up again, and then it goes to that long right hand. I haven't got there just yet, that feeds onto the start-finish straight, and it's all about just having your car set up to go around. We're getting towards that long final corner. In fact, this could be the start of it now, the final turn, and then eventually they just kink out of it, coming very shortly onto the start-finish straight. It's very technical, and if your car's not playing, there we are, onto the start-finish straight. you're really going to feel your tyres going away, particularly in the heat in the race.
I was just about to say, there is an awful lot of swinging from left to right on this circuit, which puts tremendous wear on one pair of tyres at a time, particularly in that sequence as we get onto the start-finish straight. It's hard work for these tyres, and in this weather as well, they will wear quite quickly. Good grip early on, mind you.
Yeah, good grip early on, but it's whether you can keep that grip staying there. It's about not pushing too hard. It's about making the car do the work rather than the tyres. And the person doing that best, well, it's way too early to talk about that with only 3 flying laps up on the board. Fastest of all is Kyo Chang, first driver out of the pit lane. We saw him keen, waiting at pit exit, driver from Taipei for Team iRace.win. He's had a good old season this year. And their cars look absolutely immaculate. And Kyo's best result, let's have a little look down the charts. Pick that one up for you in a second, but quite a few drivers have rotated through the second seat in the team, sitting on an advantage at the moment. Third of a second over this car, Brian Lee, the TTO Racing Mercedes, who seems to be getting quite close to the car in front. Maybe not the best of ideas. It's Frank Yu in the car in front, but it's all about making your space. There's plenty of it. There's no point crowding yourself out. But Brian Lee, GTO Racing with TTR, nice and tidy there. Tsunaka Jukuchu, as expected, moves to the top of the charts, just a tenth of a second, almost 2 tenths clear of Kyo Chang. So the BMW, we saw it right at the start from BMW Team Studi. Top of the charts, Ringo Chong slowest at the moment. We've got 2 seconds, or just under 2 seconds, between first and last. Just to stress, this is the first of 2 qualifying sessions of 15 minutes apiece. We've got 8 minutes left in this one, so we're not quite halfway. And there's a short break in between. If I do my maths, it's a break of 7 minutes between qualifying session number 1 for the GT4s and before their second driver needs to go out to start their qualifying session. Brian Lee just picking up the pace this time around. He's improving on his first flying lap, as you would expect. Caution rather important here.
Yeah, quickest Sector 1 time from Brian Lee. He's gone fairly well in Sector 2 as well, so let's see what he can register on the last portion of this lap.
And of course,
third fastest.
Of course, while he's doing this, Tsunaka Jukuchu behind him on the circuit going faster still. He's just taken another half second off the best time in that first qualifying sector. Wonderful engine note from those Mercedes, such a rumble, gets my approval. Frank Yu goes to the top, 2 minutes 23.004. 1 minute 23 really would be pushing on a little bit, so 2:23.004. Brian Lee improved, goes second, 2 minutes 23.242, so 2 tenths of a second, waiting for a response from Tsunaka Jukuchu. Here he is, coming up to complete his second flying lap. Hasn't done such a good job in the middle stint though. Middle stint of the 3 of the lap, always laps measured in 3 segments, 3 time segments. As you can see, trying to get the balance, and that has been a feature of the BMW M4. It just looks so nimble. It looks like it moves around a bit more than the Mercedes, but I think if a driver gets on top of it, they've got a bit more chuckability in that car, but it's also chuck too hard, Steve, and you knacker your tyres. That's the technical term. The
technical term being knacker your tyres, but sometimes a couple of the tyres almost floating on air as there's so much pressure on one side of the car around these corners as you lead into the start-finish straight. Really side-to-side action and inconsistent effort on both sides of the car.
Well, Jukuchu goes into second place, so Frank Yu, number 77, leads the way for Craft Bamboo Racing Team. He was the second car out of the pits, and his second flying lap is the best by 0.055 of a second. There he is. So how's Frank going in this lap? Well, the simple answer, better than ever before. He's picking up the pace. He's just set his fastest first sector of a lap. It's only a tiny, tiny margin. Top 4 cars covered by just over half a second. And bringing up the rear is Ringo Chong in 1:11. That's the second of the Team iRace.win Mercedes. And sharing that with Indonesian racer Setiawan Santoso, who also likes to be called Johannes from time to time. Don't we all? Frank Yu, fastest middle sector of anyone. Well, he's going to get down to the 2 minute 22s if he possibly can on this lap. Certainly his fastest first sector in sector 1. Overall fastest sector in sector 2, coming through sector 3. It's a long, long lap. You can certainly tell that when corner numbers go up to 23. 23 is the turn just being negotiated. 1, 2, 3 right now. There's turn 23 coming out of turn 22. That long, long right-hander. What is the time going to be for Frank Yu in the number 77 Mercedes? 2 minutes. Come on. Oh, and he's actually got it wrong in the final sector. He's a tenth of a second, nearly 2/10 down on his very best. So we don't have a 2-minute 22 as yet. You know what that's possibly telling us? Tyre life already starting to go away. The very sweetest of these Pirellis, clearly on this, in these very hot and humid temperatures around this long lap. Just to reiterate, 2 minutes 23 is a good lap time around here.
Well, I was going to give some context. As they're trying to push into the 222s, the GT3s went quickest in official practice at around the 209 mark. So still a fair bit to go once the big boys get out of there. But at the moment, yes, we're already seeing evidence that maybe tyres are restricting these drivers in this first session. Very, very hot out there on the track.
1.4 seconds from first to last, so a better lap last time around from Ringo Chong in 1:11. Mercedes now 2 minutes 23.871. In fact, as I say that, suddenly it's come down to just 0.8 of a second as Ringo Chong improved. So he's kept on making his mark go up the charts. Unfortunately, his position is still 5th out of the 5 GT4 runners. And is anybody else going to be picking up lap speed? The only person who's finding improvement this time around, or last time around, was Ringo Chong. Everyone else getting very close. 0.3 of a second from Frank Yu in the lead down to Kyo Chang in 4th overall. So blink of an eye, it's really tight. And Ringo Chong was quite gentle early on, but is pressing on. Here's Kyo Chang in the better place of the Team iRace.win Mercedes. They're 4th and 5th at the moment, but if Kyo can pick up the pace a tiny bit more, he will yet pick up position. Will he? You flip from one to the other. You see where it's yellow on the bonnet on 111, it's green on 199, and all those stripes are reversed from car to car, so you have to remember which one's got the yellow bonnet. Ringo Chong, as you can see, he's not managing to improve now in that first sector, and I think for everyone that really their best shot has been applied. There'll be a fresh set of tyres applied for qualifying session number 2 when their teammates will get a go, and it's Frank Yu by, the smallest of margins, 55 thousandths of a second here of the BMW of Tsunaka Jikuchu. So it's all Mercedes with the exception of the BMW, and 111 being pushed very hard now by Chong, but already in the first part of the lap he's lost. He's down on his very best time. Let's see what he can do on this middle timing sector.
Drifted round one of those corners, didn't he? Really putting it in.
Yeah, he's using the curves, but quite gently there. In race form, you may find them going over it a bit more, but he can probably feel the difference. But in fact, he's just done his best middle sector. So I think he was only down by a tiny fraction in sector number 1. He might find an improvement, but he's half a second down on the car in front of him. In fact, the gap between 4th and 5th, between Kyo Chang and this driver, Ringo Chong, is larger than it is from 1st down to 4th. But the good thing is, chipping away, and suddenly, I shouldn't have discounted the BMW. Just I was about to say, you'd expect that to be at the top of the time charts on 2019 form, and suddenly, bang, fastest middle sector of anyone. Tsunaka Jikuchu, he's only 55 thousandths of a second down. Let's see what we get from Ringo Chong as he goes across the start-finish line. Will that be an improvement? Yes, it is. Now we're just 0.4 of a second from first down to last. He remains in that final position, but he's got to within a tenth of a second of Kyo Chang, his teammate.
Shame for him to get better and better while everyone else is just about falling away, apart from Jikuchu, and then to still remain 5th in the timing charts.
I know you would have liked him to gain at least a position for that charge. Well, charge is the operative word. Yes, he will. 2 minutes 22.882 seconds. Now we've gone out to half a second. A lot of shorter circuits, if the gap was half a second from first to last in GT4, you'd think that was tight. But let me just reiterate, 2 minutes 22.882 seconds. It's a long lap. They're all under 2 minutes 23.5 seconds. Any further improvements coming? Not from Brian Lee. He's already parked the number 11 GTO Racing Mercedes back in the pit lane. Look at the heat haze. And we're relatively cool in our commentary position, but even now, as early at this point in the day, it's just coming up to just turned 11 o'clock, and it's going to be baking in those cockpits.
Yeah, not looking forward to 3 p.m, I can tell you that. It's such a mammoth venue. There's plenty of scope to drop a 10th here or there around this.
Well, you could say you've also got scope to get it back.
Yes,
imagine
true.
If you've gone through 21 of the 23 turns and then you just slide off the circuit. You'd just be kicking yourself if you joined all those dots. You can see the BMW is cruising on its way back in. There are surely no further challenges in this session. Well, look, the checkered flag is going to be out in a matter of seconds. So I think we can chalk the first pole position of the day in GT4. There's Brian Lee Well, they're flagging him out, but I think flag him back to the garage because we're about to go qualifying all over again. So first blood to Sunaka Chikuchu. Great job. But really, I just want to reiterate how tight it is. He's fastest by just 0.122 of a second, and the slowest car is just over a shade under half a second down on a very, very long lap.
I think you were hearing the screech of the tyres on the track there, and it's really that corner and the one before it, whereas I've already mentioned, almost as if the tyres go off the ground. There's so much pressure on the outside set of tyres.
And for the vast majority of the drivers competing here, it will be their first taste of this circuit. And as we just reiterated, 23 turns. So you can see at almost any point it's tight, it's twisty. Then there are wide open sectors of the track. And the middle third is really where the drivers have to earn their keep, linking not the slower corners. Wonderful sweep from turn 10, which is a tight left, all the way round to turn 19 when it slows right down for the final sector of the lap. But first blood to BMW Team Studi, but very, very tight indeed. I might just write that time down on a piece of paper and see what Takayuki Kinoshita can do. Can he topple that in the second session of qualifying, which starts in under 7 minutes time? Of course, the team's constantly learning the track, learning tyres, how they handle the heat, and they can transfer that across. But look how close it is, just a whisker over half a second around a very, very long lap. That is the most competitive qualifying session we've had yet, and this is the 5th of the 6th rounds for 2019. And it's first blood to the BMWs ahead of the quartet of Mercedes, but it's super, super close. Really good lap from Frank Yu. Brian Lee maybe could have challenged harder because he ended up back in the pits quite early, but very, very tight indeed, and super close between the team iRace.win Mercedes at the back of the pack, with Kyo Chang just ahead of Ringo Chong, who really was winding it up through right to the end of the session. So first blood down. We're waiting for the second of the GT4 qualifying sessions here at the Korea International Circuit. If you just switched on, wherever you are around the planet, wonderful Grand Prix circuit, not used enough. Last used in 2013 by Formula One, been used all the time since by other championships. But from the outset of the session, here are the highlights coming up. The key factor was heat and how to keep your tyres sweet. And right at the start of the session, that was Kyo Chang leading the way out. Number 77, Craft Bamboo Racing, Frank Yu. Then the GTO Racing, the blue Mercedes with Brian Lee on board. But then, of course, the car they feared most with the driver Sunako Chikuchu kicking it off was the BMW Team Studi M4. Didn't go to the top of the charts for quite some while. The early pace was set by Frank Yu. And for all these drivers, it was trying to link the car, get the balance, particularly through the sweepers around the back of the circuit. Long, long lap. Lap times of 2 minutes 23 were as good as we saw in the early stage of the session. But it was unbelievably close. One little slip here, one little slide there, and you'd lose your lap. But lap times really, from as early as the end of their second flying lap, effectively their third lap, drivers were starting to find their tyres weren't doing what they wanted them to, had to maybe cool it down. And certainly Ringo Chong kept it going right to the end and found the sweet spot at the end. It's about learning the tyres, it's about learning the circuit. With the 5 GT4 runners with plenty of space for them to go out to play. But after a while, it wasn't the Mercedes at the top anymore, it was the soulless BMW. Sunako Chikuchu went to the top, really had to fight hard. The best time up to that point was the 77 Mercedes. Frank Yu putting on a fabulous showing. He was fastest by 55 thousandths of a second. He knew a challenge might be coming from the BMW crew. And it most certainly did, because as hard as Frank Yu pushed, Sunako Chikuchu gathered his thoughts, took his time, and then started to deliver. There he was, the 81 BMW Team Studi M4, running wide, staying off the curbs there, but using the green lines outside the circuit as well, but generally knitting it together very well over the start-finish line. 2 minutes 22.882 seconds. That was pole, hard-earned, and the teammates will have to go out and do it all over again in session number 2. It's hot, it's humid, and it's about keeping your tyres very sweet indeed.
Something quite pleasing about that number, isn't there? 222.882. That's the mark that's been set so far. Pleasing for BMW to top 4 Mercedes as well.
Certainly is, but the point that really strikes me is just how close it was. I have to keep saying it. It's a very, very long lap. We race at some circuits, generally Grand Prix circuits, they have longish laps, but this is considerably longer than most of them. And more chances for drivers to get it right, but you could actually look at it the other way around. More chances for them to slip up, and I guess it's mainly the mistakes that will be costing drivers track time. But I'm super, super impressed about how incredibly tight it is. Just to reiterate, just 0.519 seconds first through to 5th places. That is no time at all.
We're a long way from Seoul here in Yeongam, as you hinted earlier, Bruce. This was an attempt to sort of revitalise the area. There was a lot of land here to work upon, which is why we've got such an enormous track. It's a good, 5, if you drive slowly, 6-hour drive. I was on a bus that was driving quite slowly from Seoul, or the airport just outside Seoul, to get to where we are here today. And they had really a sort of a blank drawing board, didn't they, to design this circuit?
Yeah, we're down in the bottom left-hand corner, the southwest of the country.
Exactly, yeah.
Climate generally very good indeed, having an unusually hot spike of temperatures at the moment. That's why we've all been getting warnings, emergency alerts on our telephones to say stay out of the sun and keep yourself cool. But yes, it was going to be an enormous complex with hotels and casinos and a marina and all these things. And it was one of those grandiose plans you really hoped was going to work, but actually strip it away. In the background of your shot, effectively behind that giant grandstand, over towards the hills on the right-hand side of the screen, is a large area of very, very heavy industry, all surrounded by beautiful rolling countryside. And off to the left of your screen is Mokpo, the local city, which is actually a very charming place and has a life of its own.
Quite lively.
There was a huge drive to promote this corner of the country, but alas, for all sorts of reasons, the project was abandoned fairly early on, and the nation has been left with this circuit. But I came by express train, not coach, so it's 2.5 hours straight down. That's a long way from your national capital to build a circuit of this merit, and one really feels if that money had been used up closer to Seoul, it would be something that was used a whole lot more. And it's a shame when a circuit's been designed with all these challenges for the drivers that it's not being used more on an international stage.
It was all a bit of a rush to put it together in time for the first Formula One race, and one of the big problems they faced was they realised late on they didn't quite have enough hotel rooms for all of the fans and the journalists and the teams. That was a problem that they had to work out with Formula One. The legacy is that we've got quite nice hotels.
Yes, they built them, but the Formula One has stopped coming, and certainly every driver and team member and member of the press who came down and had a story to tell about hotels that charge mainly by the hour rather than by the night. But it's a great racing circuit. I'm delighted to come here and see it. I always thought it was a circuit that would be beyond my grasp. We're about to start qualifying session number 2. In fact, we have just started. You can see the first car going out onto the circuit. And again, it's the 5 runners in GT4, but it's the second group of runners. In reverse order, it's Tony Fong, who's taken over the number 11 GTO Racing Mercedes. It's now going to be Richard Wee, making his seasonal debut. There he is, number 77, sharing with Frank Yu, and Frank ended up second fastest in that first session. Then Takayuki Kinoshita will come out in the car that's taken pole for the first of the races, pole for the GT4 class, may I stress. Of course, the vast majority of the runners in Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia in GT3. Then it's Setiawan Santoso in 111. There he is coming out, and the last driver onto the track, in fact he's the first one out of the track, is Zhou Qi, one of the other drivers from Taipei, who led the way out in 199. You can see again the bumps there as the drivers go around the outside. That's the pit exit lane, sweeps you around the outside of turn 1. Of course, when you have a circuit in the tropics, keeping the land stable is always an issue with all the monsoon seasons coming in. And I suppose a place you want it to be super smooth is being approached now by Zhou Qi. It will be the braking zone for the long straight down towards turn number 6. And this is where they are now. And if you're doing your braking and your car's sort of lifting off the ground, it's not what you want.
Well,
but that's a wonderfully wide corner, load of runoff. You can see in the top right of the screen. So it's a great place for overtaking. Past, it's not the main pit lane. Let's put there to fool us commentators, Steve. It's the spare pit lane, which is used because they have, with a circuit as long as this, you have several track elements, and you could split it up. So that's a national race pits. And in fact, some of the cars for the support races, for the Super Race series here, I think are using those garages, and they come round to perform from the start-finish line when required.
Yeah, we had a nice low camera angle just now. You could see cars going up slightly. Here it is again. You can see them in a moment. This car will go up slightly in elevation-wise. And, gosh, this heat haze is dramatic, isn't it? But you can see the little bumps and lumps that the car has to go over.
But this was one of the great...
Here it is. There's the elevation change.
Again, this is one of the great shots of the circuit because it shows how wide it was, and that's why this infield straight, which is the longest straight by far on this circuit, was so used for overtaking. Just around turn... you always have different numbers of corners. I'd effectively call this turn 4, but my track map calls it turn 6. Past the national pits, but overtaking into that corner, absolutely a possibility. Huge amount of runoff on the outside. Not that you want to encourage drivers to brake way too late, but there is scope if you do. And we saw that in every single one of the Grand Prix that came here. Again, the bumps and the bounces. Takayuki Kinoshita very, very confident with his BMW M4 from Team Studi. Does still hurt my eyes, though. So, out to complete the first, well, the out lap. Now on to the first flyer is Zhou Qi. Joined the championship last time out when we were at Fuji. Cooler weather conditions, certainly cooler than they'd been 12 months before when we were in Fuji. We've just been issued the 2020 Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia calendar, and the Fuji round is being shunted forward. The round that up till now has been at the Chang International Circuit in Thailand, alas, will not be with us next year. So the Fuji rounds moved from July forward to a slot in early June. So things will be different. We're coming back here again. That will be the round 4 of the championship. Then we're going to end up with 2 races in China in 2020, and the second one of which, and this is a twist for the various Blancpain GT World Challenge series, is the final round will be an endurance round. Certainly the American Championship will gain a long final round, and we in turn will... Oh, well, there we go. Show us all your sponsors' names, Joe. Put the car sideways. That is... We talked about the possibility of making a mistake, and you have a long lap to bring it back, but we were also talking about keeping your tyres sweet and swinging them out like that. Loads of oversteer there. Not the way to do it, Joe. Try and keep it on the straight.
Yeah, that's not going to help him, but let's see if he can recover. Bit of a bald spot on probably all 4 of those tyres the way he took that corner.
Well, you're driving with quite a lot of gusto there, so he hasn't been put off by that too much. Yes, he's finding the form through the sweepers, but you can see it is so easy to put a wheel out of line here. What is your friend, though? The track in large areas is very wide indeed, so it gives them more of a chance to take a bite at these sweeping corners. Of course, if it's tight, you've got limited options, but yeah, keeping it nice and tidy now. I think he's had given himself a bit of a talking to.
We've seen 1 or 2 on the grass during practice sessions. This is real grass as opposed to an artificial surface. So if you do get mired in there, there's the chance that you'll get to pick up a bit of mud, soil on your tyres. So best to stay off it, chaps, if you can. So
coming down towards the end of the lap, fastest middle sector of anyone, Zhou Qi. But then, of course, he was the next 2 drivers through somewhat slower than him. In fact, he's 0.3 of a second up on Setiawan Sentosa and way clear of Richard Wee. Richard, of course, dialing himself back into the championship, but competing in GT4. Had a couple of outings last year. So, target time 2:24.9. Okay, we know the ultimate time so far, 2:22.8.
Couple of seconds.
But as a first flyer, and including that sideways moment, certainly more to come from Zhou Qi. Yeah. Next car over the start-finish line should be Richard Wee. Goes over 2:28.2. So, scope for improvement there from Richard. Setiawan Toza goes top, 2 minutes 24.3. For some reason, the time for Richard Wee went onto our screen and has
expecting
not come up fully on the timing screen.
Kinoshita to probably jump up from 5th to well above him. He's gone.
Oh, undoubtedly. He's fastest in first sector, fastest in second sector. So waiting for his time to come at 2 minutes 24.3 for Setiawan Santoso in the 111 Mercedes. The sister car, the one we're looking at now, Zhou Qi, 2 minutes 24.9. And disappointingly slow, Tony Fong, 2 minutes 30.7. So that's the slowest lap we've seen as a flying lap so far in GT4. He may have his reasons. We will find out. Richard Wee, his time, 2 minutes 28.2. Credited but not credited. But wait for Kinoshita to come through in 81. Bang to the top. 2 minutes 23.6. Fastest by 2/3 of a second to the thousandth.
Yeah, quickest in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Just slacked off a bit in the final sector, but good enough to put him on top of the table.
Right, but what he knows, that's his first flyer. He knows that the first flyer from his teammate, it was the second flyer that looked really good, and the third flyer that was put in by Sonaka Jakuchu that got him into the 2 minutes 22. So you'd say there's scope for Kinoshita, who's fastest at the moment, to go faster still.
And to our surprise, we saw 1 or 2 times improve right towards the end of the session there in that first qualifying session. So there's still scope for everybody to do well.
Certainly is, and I think, of course, all these drivers in the second qualifying session will have gained knowledge from their teammates who went out in session 1, saying, actually, you can do 3 really good flyers. And that knowledge is always useful, particularly around a lap as long as this one. So who's on the move? Yes, there are improvements around the course of the lap. Richard Wee is sure to improve. Still can't work out why his lap has been taken away. He maybe exceeded track limits.
I suspect that's what it was. We've seen a number of drivers go close a number of times.
Okay, Joe Chi, first driver to set a second flying lap. Just waiting for that to come onto the board. He's third fastest at the moment. So it's Kinoshita in the 81 BMW from Setiawan Santoso, the Indonesian racer who's the best of the Mercedes drivers. 2 minutes 24.3. Richard Wee does get a lap on the board. 2 minutes 24.7. So he's third fastest. That's far more representative.
Kinoshita looking to improve upon his time. He's gone purple again in sectors 1 and 2. So should go quicker than he did in his previous lap. He's already top of the charts in the BMW.
And he's attacking. Knows the team, knows the car, learning the circuit, and is linking it together very, very well indeed. He could even go into the 22s on this lap. I think he'll be just the wrong side of the 2 minute 23 barrier, but he's fastest. Oh, an improvement from Santoso. Goes to just over a third of a second down, 24.0 seconds. 2 minutes 24.0 for Setiawan Santoso, the number 111 Mercedes, but Kinoshita is going to raise the bar coming into the final. There's the final corner onto the start-finish straight after that long right-hander. How fast is this going to be? 2 minutes 23.203. So he's going to have to do a third flying lap as his teammate Sunako Chikuchu did to see if he can get into the 2 minutes 22s. May call it off, back it off on this lap, or wait. Well, let's see. We'll know the answer to that. Body language of the car. Let's see, it's slow point of the circuit. We'll know further around the corner when he gets into the sweepers if he's really backed off. But he's now 0.8 of a second clear of Setiawan Santoso. And you have to say, with 5 minutes on the clock, nobody else looks to have that sort of speed.
When do you think they decide to back off or go for a third fastest lap? Is it the entry into the first corner?
I think they might have made the decision towards the end of the previous lap when they feel how much life is in the tyres. But actually, I won't say the session is over because Setiawan Santoso is really making the 111 Mercedes fly. He has all but matched the opening sector time of, as I said, that Kinoshita. Suddenly he backs off in the middle sector, but was within a few thousandths of the first sector time of the car that's on provisional pole, the BMW of Takayuki Kinoshita. So Setiawan Santoso really, really improving through the course this season.
Santoso good way ahead of Wee at the moment.
And Wee's gone down a second. Wee's gone down a position because Joe Chi has got the second of the crowd. Oh, dear me. There's Setiawan Santoso. I think his tyres have rather gone there because getting towards the end of the lap, and that middle sector wasn't good, and that final sector with that. Oh, I better slow it all down before I turn to the left moment. And Richard Wee just went fleetingly. I don't know what's happened. I think it might be a transponder problem on Wee's car because he suddenly went into second place and he's back down in third. It's still this car, the 111 car that is in second place. 0.8 of a second down. Didn't improve last time around. Was when we saw the mistake at the end of the lap. May yet be able to gather it together for the following lap.
Kinoshita certainly backed off, by the way, in the first sector of his first lap. It's not looking as if he's going to go for a third quick time immediately anyway.
No, he's got time to do a cool-down lap. At the start of the lap, I was debating whether he had. It looked so the car had, but sometimes camera angles, as we know, can foreshorten things. But certainly, how much did he back off? Well, by about 11 seconds through the first sector. Second sector, but he's backed off by about 15 seconds. So either he's just cruising back to the pits or really letting everything cool down. And yes, it's a qualifying session. It's 2 15-minute sessions, change of driver in between. But it doesn't take away from the fact that whoever's in that cockpit, even sitting still in the pit lane, would be getting hot. And as a driver told me in the European Lamborghini Junior Series, Polish driver Karol Bash said to me when it was about the same sort of temperature, we were at Misano, he said, "Oh, in the car, I will be like a chicken in an oven." So you get the picture, and he reckoned it was 70 degrees inside the cockpit of the car, or his race suit.
Well,
as you can imagine, you just can't perform at that level for that long. Yeah, is Kinoshita going to bring it into the pits? He's on pole by 0.8 of a second. I just want to reiterate.
Oh, we've got a spinner.
That we've got a spinner.
Chi.
So Joe Chi, fourth fastest, had just set his fastest first sector of all. So that is very galling. But the first qualifying session, point just over half a second between first and last. This one, down to Tony Fong. It's 6.3 seconds. Tony is now picking up his pace in last position, but he's got to find 4 and a bit seconds to even catch Zhou Qi, and Zhou Qi's not making life easy. Yes, Kinoshita did come back to the pits. Meanwhile, out on the track, Setiawan Santoso in the number 111 Mercedes just banged in the fastest first sector of anybody, faster even than Kinoshita has managed. He's second fastest on the time charts. There's Richard Wee, third fastest, not going to improve this time around, one wouldn't think. No, he's way off the timing beam. There's Richard Wee in the background, 199. Zhou Qi, no improvement for him. And in the background of the shot, will Setiawan Santoso improve? Yes, he goes fastest, 2 minutes 22.771 seconds. There he is with the yellow bonnet on the car. Faster even than Sunako Jikuchu went in session number 1. We were warned by that fastest middle sector of anybody. Then he banged in his fastest sector for the final one. So suddenly, instead of an 8/10 of a second deficit, he's 4/10 of a second here clear of Kinoshita. Kinoshita's in the pits. He could just about nip out, but he won't get around to start another flying lap.
Yeah, there'll be some big celebrations when he gets out of his car to register the fastest time in either of these first 2 sessions. And really, quite surprisingly, Kinoshita, I think, had assumed that he was going to clock the fastest time in this session. And he's run out of time to reply.
Well, I was just saying how Setiawan Santoso has improved through the course of the season. That is proof in its own right. Indonesian driver, top of the piles into the final minute, and the lead challenger is in the pit lane. Looking for any other improvements. In fact, Tony Fong is chipping away. He's now, as the target moved upwards, he's 5 seconds almost precisely down on class pole, but Tony Fong getting down into the 227s, but into the 222s, Setiawan Santoso. So really, really good job from Setiawan there. And certainly his teammate Ringo Chong will be very, very pleased indeed. That looks like it's going to give them, it's right now, provisional pole position in the GT4 class for tomorrow's race. Already we know the GT4 pole for this afternoon's race. That's the BMW team Studi entry. But for Santoso, really, really good job. Any late improvements? Richard Wee continues to pick up the pace in the 77 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. He has to gain 1.5 seconds though to get up to Kinoshita, so it's really for pride rather than for position.
There's also a possibility that Qi could perhaps move from 4th to 3rd. There's not too much of a gap between him and Wee.
Well, the checkered flag is out, so whatever they do, they have to do on this lap. And I'd just like to point out that Setiawan Santoso sort of surfaced racing in Asian Pacific Ferrari Championship last year. This is his first season in this class, in GT4, in Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia, and that is a really, really strong performance from him. Pole position, no challenger's going to get close to that. Final few drivers coming through to complete a lap. Will Richard Wee improve in 3rd place overall? Very close to it. In fact, that is his best lap, so he goes just over a second down. So really good job from Richard Wee, learning the car, learning the circuit. And number 11, Tony Fong, slowest of all, but he's saving his best for last. He's building up his pace. As long as he doesn't make a mistake at the end of this lap, he's taken chunks out of his best time.
Yeah, let's see what he can do. 227.772, his quickest so far.
Well, I think he's going to get to a low 27. Let's just see. But 2 minutes 22.771 seconds, a 1/10 of a second quicker than managed in the first qualifying session. So for Team iRace.win, they will be taking GT4 pole. Let's see what Tony Fong can do at the tail of the field.
Yep.
226.174. So he got down to 3.5 seconds down. He really was taking huge chunks out. I think he was just very, very cautious early on. Maybe that's his style of learning a circuit. We did see one slightly sideways moment. That was Zhou Qi, who ended up 4th fastest. But it's Qi's teammate who's top of the charts. Very, very good time. Let's take a look at those positions. 0.4 of a second was his margin. He found 1.2 seconds on one lap, and that was enough to move him to the top of the charts in the Team iRace.win number 111 Mercedes. And Takayuki Kinoshita will have to make do with 2nd in class. Looked as though he got the job done, not as quick as his teammate Sunako Jikuchu, but was well clear. And then suddenly the Indonesian Santoso attacked and did so with great, great style. Good charge towards the end from Richard Wee, getting used to the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. Goes 3rd fastest, a second or thereabouts down on that pole position, but still a second clear of Zhou Qi. And bring up the rear, Tony Fong for the number 11 GTO Racing Team entry. That's GT4 qualifying done and dusted. We'll have a 7-minute break in terms of track action, and then the GT3 runners will rumble out. So let's take a look at the highlights. Keen to get out there with Setiawan Santoso out over the bumpy pit exit onto the circuit. Place and space to play with. But all money at that point was on the 81 BMW Team Studi. The M4, the one M4 against the 4 Mercedes-AMG GT4 Chargers. And it looks as though the job was one that was done very well by Takayuki Kinoshita. And the most lauded moment came for Joe Chi. Got it all together and amazingly picked up the pace thereafter, but he would end up 4th overall. But it was about keeping the mistakes to a minimum. Very easy around the career international circuit. Very, very long lap to make a slip up. Very, very testing corners. Richard Wee, quite cautious to start with in the championship for the first time this year, having raced it in the past, in 2017 and 2018. Little mistake there, you can see going towards the edge of the circuit, coming off the power, and that was the option there. If you kept your foot down, you'd end up probably running wide at the next corner. So cut his losses, tucked back in. While he did that, Takayuki Kinoshita banged in one quick lap, banged in another. 2 minutes 23.2, looked as though he'd got the job done, was on top of the charts, 0.8 of a second clear of Setiawan Santoso. It looks as though it's going to be BMW Team Studi pole ×2. They've already got pole for the first race, but then Setiawan Santoso settled down and got quicker and quicker and quicker. Suddenly we had the fastest middle sector of all, his best final sector, top of the charts, 0.4 of a second clear. Pole position for the Sunday race, the second of our 2 races here at the Yeongam circuit. There, the checkered flag. Job done, and done very well indeed for Setiawan Santoso in the 111 Mercedes from Team iRace.win.
Yeah, 222.771, quicker than we saw in the first session. Really nice dramatic stuff from Santoso to pull that one out of the bag. And for the second time, Bruce, we're seeing times drop late on in the session, which will be encouraging also for the GT3 drivers. They'll be watching that carefully, realising that their tyres can go long or longish. Still the option to register quick times as things develop.
The big difference, Steve, of course, there will be a lot more GT3 runners out on the track. And if some drivers are taking a cautious approach, they had practice yesterday, had a practice session this morning, still trying to feel their way in, and they get a driver who's confident to go for it from the outset, there could be moments when a driver's lap is going to be somewhat hampered. Driver who's made a big splash this weekend, coming in to join the championship. Alessio Picariello, one of the stars of the series, not here this weekend. He's competing in the Japanese Super GT series. He's joined Jeffrey Lee, Craft Bamboo Racing number 88. And Maxi Götz, regular racer for Mercedes all around the world. They pop him into championships here and there. And he didn't just arrive, he arrived with considerable aplomb and was top of the time charts in one of the sessions yesterday. And certainly for Jeffrey Lee, who's got 2 wins in the bag already this year with Alessio Picariello, will be thinking, you know, as replacements go, this one's quite handy. So certainly look out for Maxi Götz this weekend. Another driver in for the weekend is Marcos Gomez, Brazilian racer, joining Yuya Sakamoto this weekend in the Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari. Yuya's had quite a few teammates so far this year. In fact, the last time out he had Marco Seefried, one before Andre Heimgartner, and David Russell in the opening round. So this weekend it's the turn of Marcos Gomez. Raced, he's no stranger to GT3 Ferraris, raced one already this year in the IMSA Sports Car Series in the GTD class, but most well known for being Brazilian stock car champion back in 2015, but likes to come and race all around the world. So he'll be in the Ferrari, not quite in your shot there. The car at the front of the pit exit, though, is the one shared this weekend, Jeffrey Lee and his new teammate Maxi Götz, the 88. One of the 3 Mercedes in the GT3 class from Craft Bamboo Racing, the one that has the most different livery with the red, white and black.
Quickest in official practice, Bruce. They went round in 2:08.625, just ahead of Intra Fuvazak and Imperatori.
So look at the heat haze down there. The most important car in terms of the Korean fans is on the left of the screen, the 97 Indigo Racing Mercedes. MG Choi at the wheel, also races as Roloff Bruins, but likes to be known this year as MG Choi. Got a lot of sponsors, guests this weekend. Home racer on home ground. He's also, I understand, competing in the Super Race Series here as well. It's a championship he rose from to come, and the team rose from to come and compete in the Blancpain GT World Challenge, and that 97 Mercedes has had just an absolutely cracking season. And Roloff is MG Choi. I'll have to keep swapping between the names. He's only 6 points down on the championship leaders, Hamprecht and Sathian Thirikul. So a lot to play for. 25 points for a win. So you can see gap between points for first, 25, and points for second, 18. That's 7. Gap between them is only 6, so it's very, very close indeed.
2 weekends left, 4 races to come, so the 6 points could vanish within the blink of an eye. Good opportunity.
And what we've seen, Steve, this year is the importance of picking up points at every round, and those top 2 crews have done precisely that.
Yep.
And slip-ups can cost drivers over the years. We always used to see Aditya Patel always used to be up at the top with Mitch Gilbert in races, particularly in the first season. They'd have a slip-up, and suddenly you could see their challenges. We're finishing 4 places, down in 4th place, just gaining points when they weren't picking them up. It's so competitive here that you've got to keep scoring.
The top 3 drivers actually have picked up points in every single round so far, so your point is well made. And that could well be the secret. 6 points the gap at the moment for Bruins, and he will be looking to make amends in front of his home crowd on his home circuit, as it were. Spoke to him on Friday, and he's very excited about the prospect.
Just trying to identify the car that's second in the line. I think it's the...
It's like it could be a tie.
It's the Porsche. It's Pi. You can see the numbers on the door. It's the car that's one of the very front runners. It's a Panther AAS Motorsport Porsche, Vutigon Intrafuvasak, and Alexander Imperatori. And Imperatori was at top of one of the sessions as well, so that's a car that's going to be right at the sharp end of the field. That's number 918.
You can see the tie colours on the wing mirror there.
Yeah, nice little touch. And then that's down at the end of the pit lane where we have a lot of the absolute racing cars. You can see the bright blue metallic number 13, the Audi sitting there.
Some of them leaving their doors open to the very last moment.
Well, you would. And what you can't see from here, just along the strips along the top of the garages, we still have some of the drivers' names and images from when the Grand Prix was last year in 2013. Some peeling in the case of Max Chilton, but Felipe Massa still looking good in his portrait there. Of course, a lot of water under the bridge since then. So waiting for the start of this, the first of 2 15-minute qualifying sessions. Any second now, in fact about 8 seconds from now, the green lights will be shown. 15 minutes, a 7-minute gap, and then they go all over again.
I tweeted a few of those photographs actually earlier on, Bruce, of the Formula One drivers with their peeling posters above the pit garage. We're underway. Headlights on, barely seems reasonable.
Third car in that line, the number 911. Absolute Racing's Tanart Sathian Thirikul sharing with Philip Hamprecht. They are the top of the points chart. They've had a very, very good, consistent season. So, the full pack of cars coming out to play, bouncing away over that little... It's actually a fairly major bump. If you took in a road car, you'd hardly notice it, but these race cars are set up so stiffly. But what they did, you can see that was an additional bit of the track to move the pit exit road further away from the racing line into turn 1. Then this long infield straight, the longest straight on the circuit, with a gentle rise and then a much steeper rise, just as they might want to be thinking about doing some braking just to keep things interesting. But the big difference, of course, between the GT4 runners and the GT3 is not just the speed, they're about 15 seconds faster per lap, it's how many there are. So traffic is going to be a big issue. The tyres, we don't know how long they're going to stay sweet for, but you don't want to wreck what could potentially your best flying lap by being caught up behind somebody else who's not as quick as you. So this lap is about just building up your speed, but building in some space. So for all of these drivers, just seeing the Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari going out the inside of one of the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, make yourself space. And again, there is a rare chance to see a little bit of gradient drop. You've had to climb up that mid-infield straight, then it stays fairly flat, and then you start coming down the hill again into the back third of the circuit, the middle third, which is where the drivers have the sweepers. Got to stay sweet, keep their tyres as good as they can, but carry a wonderful run of momentum through these corners. They come at them thick and fast. Plenty of width actually for overtaking, but when you get to the sweepers, that's where you start to run out of space.
Look at the amount of rubber that the heat has taken off these tyres. There's plenty of grip for these drivers. The opportunity to put fast laps in early.
It's about getting heat into tyres. The 55 Mercedes from Craft Bamboo Racing, Daniel Au at the wheel. And in behind is Asavahami, the Thai racer, running in number 128. That's the Lamborghini, all in black, Vitana Motorsport. He shares that with Japanese racer Akihiro Asai, but it's his turn at the moment. It's the turn of the Thai, Chonsu Asavahami. So, on to the first flying lap we go. 911 has got itself to the front of the pack. That's Tanart Sathian Thirikul sitting on top of the championship table. Sharing with Philip Hamprecht. Heat haze abounds, temperatures sky high in the cockpit of these GT racers. who was looking good around the opening lap. In fact, his teammate Wan Bo set the fastest time in the final 2 sectors on the opening lap. That's not the 9:12 behind, that's the 9:18. That's fellow Thai racer Vutigorn Inthra-Fuvasak. You can hear the crisper engine note of these GT3 racers. In comparison to the GT4 stablemates, they've got much bigger wings, far more downforce, far more serious, and it must be added, far more expensive racing cars. But these are the real deal. GT3, a global phenomenon. The championship continues to grow and grow. Just worth reiterating, the Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia, as it's been renamed this year, is because it's aligned with the GT World Challenge America and GT World Challenge Europe. And points can be scored right across the board to work out who's going to be the overall Blancpain GT World Challenge champion. But right now, all eyes on the Asian series, all eyes on Tanat Sathienthirakul in the number 911, desperate to take pole position here in Korea. Very short blast down to that first corner. And so the shorter the blast, the more likely there's going to be a bunching of cars and who knows what down at turn 1 in the race. The first of our 2 races, Steve, this afternoon, so they've got to compose themselves after qualifying and then a little bit of a rest before tomorrow's race. But
I'd suggest a cold shower in between.
Yeah, cold, being whacked with a couple of flannels. And then you should be good to go racing again. And I just have to keep stressing, it's super hot and humid here. Far hotter than the locals would have inspected national heat warnings. So you know it's something when your cabbie from the station is very, very keen to tap his thermometer and show you how hot it is in the car, you go, you mean it's not always like this? Well, I'm very glad for you, because it really, when I got out at the station here in Mokpo, just across the water from the circuit, I thought, oh, blimey, I thought it might be warm, but not this hot and humid. So it's a huge, huge factor.
The front of these Porsches are very low, Bruce, aren't they? They're scrubbing against the deck quite often, especially given that it's a bit of a bumpy track. You'll see them oscillate up and down.
Top 3 runners were in Porsches, but then local delight, the Indigo Racing Mercedes, number 97, top of the charts. What can the Ferrari do at the moment? Just looking down the time charts. 3rd fastest for Yuya Sakamoto, so it's MG Choi, also races as Roloff Bruins, 2 minutes 8.798 seconds. Yuya Sakamoto's 2nd fastest now. Someone else had a time taken away, can't work that one out. The person who was Tanat Sathienthirakul's time, I don't know what's going with that, he is not listed. No, 666. Track limits, time deleted. Okay, so time deleted for Sathienthirakul. He's going to have to do it again, but one expects the 2nd fastest flying lap to be the better one of the 2. They've put their markers down. It's Roloff Bruin, MG Choi, top of the charts, 999 is 2nd fastest now. So we've got the Audi, one of the Audi Sport cars. That's the Tianchi Racing Team entry. Yan Chen, 2nd fastest. Yuya Sakamoto, 3rd in the Ferrari. But this car, the 97, Mercedes, bit of traffic up ahead for MG Choi. Won't want that, but his time good by nearly 0.4 of a second. Who's picking up the pace? Sathienthirakul had his best time, his only time removed from him. He just banged in the fastest first sector of anyone by, I think, quite some margin. Really impressive lap from the 911.
He's gone well in sector 2 as well, Bruce. Currently 12th because of that time being taken off because he exceeded track limits. We are expecting to see him bump up well into the top 10 when he completes this final sector.
And he's driving with very, very attacking style. Got great balance. He's just increased in confidence with this Porsche this year. Riding wide over the curves there, but just about, he's understood where the flow is. So he's in the penultimate corner, sweeping into the final corner. Target time 2 minutes 8.798 seconds. Surely that's going to be taken away from MG Choi. No, 2 minutes 8.999. So he slots back into what had been 2nd place, back into 2nd place. He goes, of course, that first flying lap removed for exceeding track limits. Car 88 has had a time taken away as well. Who's at the wheel of that at the moment? That's Lee. We saw that as the first car onto the track. Jeffrey Lee. He's sharing this weekend with Maxi Goetz. So it's Mercedes top, MG Choi, 2nd fastest. Porsche, Tanat Sathienthirakul, and Yan Chen, 3rd in an Audi.
Stewards being kept busy, plenty of cars exceeding track limits and having their times wiped out in the process.
Yeah, where I'm trying to see is repeat of where they're going off. Turn 6 is the corner that's being nominated, and of course it's where they're trying to set themselves up for the sweepers.
Daniel Au, the latest one to have one wiped off the board.
Yeah, looking at Daniel Au right now in the 666, the Vincenzo Sospiri Motorsport Lamborghini. picking up his pace this time around, and when you've had your best lap taken away, you're more than likely to improve the next time around, since you've got nothing to compare it against when it's your second flyer. So Daniel out, bang, up into the top 10, into 9th position overall. We've got 18 runners in the GT3 class, 5 in the GT4s.
Backed off a little bit and went bumping over a curve after the start-finish straight there.
Still all eyes on the screens. More than halfway through this 15-minute qualifying session, the first of 2 qualifying sessions for the GT3 runners. It's Roloff Bruins racing as MG Choi in 2019 Championship Challenger, Korean racer on home ground, top of the charts by 0.201 of a second from Tanat Sathyan Thirikul. But the good news for the Korean racer Bruins is the fact that Sathyan Thirikul is not improving on this current flyer. Trouble is, nor is Bruins. He's at the top. Wyan Chen not improving. In fact, the improvements are coming from drivers further down the chart. These are drivers only just completing their second flying lap. Yuya Sakamoto, 5th fastest at the moment. So 4 makes of cars. His Ferrari is 5th, so there are 4 makes of cars in the top 5 positions. Again, stressing how the balance of performance is such a strong feature of the SRO Racing Championships. Gives all the manufacturers who come out to play an equalisation of performance. So it's down to the drivers to be at the top of the charts, not down to the manufacturers. Good run to be 4th fastest at the moment for the 910 crew. And it's Anthony Liu at the wheel at the moment, the Chinese racer. He'll be sharing with Kiwi Chris van der Drift. He is 4th fastest. 4/10 of a second down on the ultimate pace. Long lap. Cars going to the pits in the background. It looked like 9. In fact, I just talked about 910, and I believe that was the JRM Motorsport car. Yeah, it was. Anthony Liu into the pit lane. Now, on board this weekend, Shane van Gisbergen. He'll get the second go in this car, but it's the Prince of Johor in that 888 Race Engineering. Fabulous, bright silver, metallic silver Mercedes. 11th fastest at the moment. His best lap, 2.9 seconds down on the ultimate pace, but he hit the ground running. This is his first full season on the international stage. Just looking to see where the improvements are coming. He did a good good first sector last time around. He's going to find a bit of chunk of time to get into the top 10. His next target is the one and only McLaren in the top class, with Viren Bhakti at the wheel at the moment, the number 61 car. There is the 61 car, getting a tow, not wanting a tow really, particularly when he's making what he can over the start-finish straight. So he got straight behind the AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini into the final corners. Use a very short tow because it's not a long straight, the start-finish straight. But McLaren good at the moment. In fact, there was an improvement for him last time around. Stays in 10th place overall. Viren Bhakti pushing hard.
Pardon me, Bruce. Christina Nielsen's bumped up 1 position. Her fastest time of the day so far. She's gone from 9th to 8th, just leaping above Intra Fuvasak.
Expecting more from Intra Fuvasak, but the clock is counting down. It started at 15 minutes, it's down to 4 minutes. And the 918 Porsche has been not quite on it last time around, but not far enough off it to make one think he backed off. Second of the 2, or maybe the first of the 2 Audis from Absolute Racing. Intra Fuvasak, in fact, just suddenly goes up to 7th place. Here's the number 12 car, which is just looking for the time of the number 13 sister car. So, in fact, down in 13 is 13th overall, and number 12 is this one here. Looks as though he's cruising back to the pits. 6th fastest at the moment for David Wyan Chen.
Sathyan Thirikul's got into the pits as well, so I think he's probably settled for 2nd quickest.
Well, MG Choi, top of the charts in the pits. 2nd fastest, Sathyan Thirikul in the pits. And the car that's 4th fastest, the 910 Porsche, in the pits as well. So the pits are a busy place. Maybe they're deciding that's as good as we can do for now. Let's have more time than if we came in at the end of the session, so we can sort the car for the second of the qualifying runs. All of the drivers, they have to decide if they're the sharpest tool in the box. Of course, in their own heads they think they are, but if they know their teammate is faster and has a chance of taking outright pole for race number 2, maybe it's best to give the team a chance to do that. And I certainly think in the case of the 910 Porsche crew, Anthony Liu will consider Chris van der Drift, his teammate, a driver who is possibly good enough to take a pole in for the second race. Give him all the chance you can. Come in, give him the gen, how the car's behaving on the tyres, how long the tyres are lasting, how good the track is at the moment. Wyan Chen just picking up the pace a little bit, but right Now let's see, we look at number 12. That's Wear on Tan. Came good last time out with Martin Rump. Had a bit of an up and down season. The speed has been there, but the results haven't been everything they wanted. But they took a second and a first in Fuji, so they're really the drivers who are working their way up the chart. But they're down in 5th overall at the moment, and they'll need several miracles over the final 4 races, the 2 rounds, both here in Korea and Shanghai for the finale in September.
Now, top 4 runners all in the pits at the moment then, so the improvement, if any, will come from Sakamoto, Tan in 5th and 6th.
Yeah, really, 0.6 of a second cover the top 6 cars, but then you have another 0.8 of a second back to Butikon through Fuvasak in 9.12. Looking now at Wan Bo, one of the 3 Absolute Racing Porsches. He is down in 8th position overall. The Ferrari with Sakamoto, good for 5th. The top runner still on the circuit. His last lap was his best, but this lap not really going his way. But of course, as other cars come into the pit lane, it gives you more space to go and weave your craft. And a driver who's done absolutely nothing in the session, I reckon, has probably had quite a few laps removed for exceeding track limits. 19 seconds off the pace. That's not the true form of Daniel Lau in the 55 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. He's now, well, he's improved it to just 16 seconds off, so all not right for the 55 Mercedes crew. Car number 666, the Lamborghini, lost another lap for exceeding track limits. There's a bit of a theme here.
We've got a Daniel Au and an Alex Au competed this weekend, so don't get confused.
Oh dear, so Wan Bo's had a bit of a moment in the 912 Porsche. He's 8th fastest and certainly not going to improve on that. And with the clock beating down within the final half minute until the checkered flag comes out, there will be no improvement. Whether he gets bumped remains to be seen, but the bulk of the runners in the top dozen are in the pit lane. One driver's still out there, still improving his pace. Australian racer Andrew McPherson, he's 8 seconds off, but don't forget he's running in a different class. He's running in the AM class. At the moment he's a second or so down on Asavahami's time. That's the only championship rival he's got here this weekend in the AM class. 16th and 17th overall. 3rd fastest, and this car has remained on the circuit. But no, in fact, came into the pits and back out again, the 999 Audi. But it's not doing any good at all for Waian Chen. He will remain in 3rd position. Any late challengers? None that I can see on the timing screen. So MG Choi, Korean racer, wanted to take pole position, so he has done, and by a tiny margin at this level of the championship, 0.2 of a second over Tanar Sathyan Thirikul. So what you have, the 2 championship challengers, 1st and 2nd on the grid for the first of our 2 races here. That will be this afternoon. Any late challengers? The checkered flag is out, 8.8. Jeffrey Lee pushing on, 13th fastest. Isn't where he wants to go. He's got a new teammate this weekend. Asavahami runs off the circuit, perhaps looking in his mirrors. Doesn't matter, the checkered flag is out. Neither of them are going to improve. So Asavahami's got the GTE, he's got the AM class, the GT3 AM class pole. There he is in the black Lamborghini, tripling in. There is pit entrance. So at the end of that session, it's MG Choi, the Indigo Racing Mercedes, ahead of Tanar Sathyan Thirikul, Absolute Racing Porsche, and number 999, the Chinese entered team, Tianchi Racing Team, Waian Chen, sharing with Swiss racer Rahel Fry. There it is, the 999 Audi, just coming into that final sequence of corners and will enter the pit lane. And the Pro-Am top car, we mentioned it early on, number 910, that's the JRM Anthony Liu driven Porsche. That was one of the earlier cars to come into the pit lane. Good job for him. He brought it in with about 3 minutes to spare. And we'll be briefing his teammate, Chris Van der Drift, the Kiwi. The checkered flag is out. Quite a few drivers will get back in and go, what do you mean they took my best lap away from me? And the next one, driving limits, track limits are very much a feature at all circuits around the world. And the stewards certainly got their sleeves rolled up for that session. Quite a few cars having their very best time taken away, some including their very first flying laps. They get it wrong. Put in a banker lap is what the team managers always want, but if you can't even get that right, you've got to just be a little more cautious. But let's reiterate, it's a very, very long lap here. Plenty of opportunity to get it wrong, particularly when you're trying to link those wonderful sweeping corners around the back third of the circuit together. Just run a little bit deep into one and then you're already in trouble at the next turn. But at the end of that session, 0.201 of a second is the margin that MG Choi, who sometimes races also under the name of Roloff Bruins, there you can see him top of the charts, the Indigo Racing Mercedes racer. Then Tanat Safian-Thirikul, the driver who's leading him and overall in the championship. He went second quickest, third fastest, great run for YN Chen in his Audi from the Tianchi Racing team. And then top Pro-Am runner, Anthony Liu, fourth fastest overall. There you can see he's got the black background behind his number, just 0.4 of a second down on pole position. Very, very good run. Yuya Sakamoto, new teammate this weekend. Marcos Gomez, the Brazilian, joins him. There you can see him fifth fastest in his Ferrari. Great spread of manufacturers at the top end of the championship. Best of Lamborghinis, down in 11th place overall. Clean, tidy session. Fireworks ensured for the next part of the session. Q2, that will set the grid for the Sunday race, the second of our two races here at the Carrera International Circuit. So for the drivers now, it's all about briefing their teammates on exactly how long the tyres are going to last, where the bumps are. They've had practice sessions here, but it's a long lap, and a lot of drivers still finding their lines through the sweepers.
During those briefing sessions, I imagine that Chris van der Drift will be one of the more delighted drivers to come out on track. He was in good spirits yesterday, and to see his teammate, amateur teammate, register a time that's only 0.4 off the top pace in that third session will give him plenty to be encouraged by.
And I think one of the keys, particularly in the Pro-Am class, is you have an AM, and a lot of those AMs are taking all the instruction they can possibly get to try and pick up their pace. And so for drivers like Chris van der Drift, he doesn't have to just go out there and set really quick times. He's got to pass that knowledge over, and he's clearly doing so well. So let's take a look at the highlights. And the first car out onto the circuit was one of the three Craft Bamboo Racing entries, Jeffrey Lee, new teammate this weekend. And a couple of the Absolute Racing Porsches are followed out, and immediately the drivers trying to get heat in their tyres, and of course at the same time trying to get the heat out of the cockpit. Yuya Sakamoto diving up the infield, the second of the infield straights, the shorter one, and then the twists begin. As you can see, the rolling hills around the Carrera International Circuit and the sweeping corners, some slow ones to start with, and then they opened up. The Tianchi Racing Audi, YN Chen, really started to press on. One of the few drivers who managed to sort of keep it between the white lines. A lot of drivers exceeding those track limits and having their best laps taking away. Johor's Prince Abdul Ibrahim enjoying his run just outside the top 10, but again that 888 Racing Mercedes looking fabulous in that bright metallic silver. Absolute Racing pressing on with their Audis, number 12 being driven very, very hard indeed by Wear on Tan. And such strong form last time out. Look for the same here. The 911 entry with Tanat Safian-Thirikul leading the championship. Pushed and pushed hard. Had his very first flying lap taken away for exceeding track limits. Got back up towards the top end of the table. But all along, the driver pushing him in the championship, MG Choi, on home ground, maybe getting a fillip from that, was setting the pace in the 97 Mercedes from Indigo Racing. Doing a very, very good and tidy job. Would go on to take pole position by 0.201 of a second. There was nothing in it, but he got that fast flying lap in. The others had to chip away they did, but none managed to topple him. So first job done in front of his sponsors, his friends, his family, and the car's already lined up with that car, the Indigo Racing Mercedes, at the front of the queue. Now heading out to action when the session starts, with Manuel Metzger back on board, the German racer, his teammate again. You can see the drivers wafting their doors, waiting to get going. Keep the heat out of those cockpits. They start in under a minute's time. A lot of the cars still with the doors up. You see the McLaren with its cantilevered doors in the middle of the background in the pit lane. That's being handed over from Piti Bierenbach to his Japanese teammate Keita Sawa. That's a glorious looking 720S McLaren. So the track is empty, but not for long. Another 15 minutes of qualifying coming up in 30 seconds time. It's hot. It's very, very humid, and not a breath of wind to move the air around the paddock. So conditions very, very extreme indeed here in Korea.
That time registered in the previous session, not yet the quickest one that we've seen this weekend. Bruins registered a 2:08.625 in official practice, so there's still plenty of time to come off these cars in this final qualifying session.
Well, I think it's also worth stressing that potentially some of the quickest drivers just happen to be doing the second driver slot. So we'll see how low we can go. But as we saw in the GT4 qualifying that went ahead of us, the second qualifying session was faster than the first, and I think again that knowledge that gets transferred in that little window of time between qualifying session 1 and qualifying session 2 could come to fruition. So maybe we'll get down to the low 2-minute 8-second laps. Yes, 2-minute second laps. There are long laps here in Korea.
Some impressive names finding their way out onto track. Metzger, Hamprecht, Imperatori. Van der Drift had a good season in many different competitions, found himself on the podium a fair bit, had a few tussles with the stewards as well. But as I said, in good spirits yesterday, had a big smile on his face, very happy to be here despite the hot weather that these drivers have to compete under.
They really do, and if any drive, if you think Pro-Am combination means a slightly heavier built, successful businessman as the Am, you can forget that image now. They have to be athletes, and certainly for a lot of them, they went racing, for all sorts of reasons, but as they get more serious, they realise it does have to involve a lot of time in the gym. And in fact, they've got a lot of the time in the sauna here, because that's what it's going to be like on board all of these cars. It's very, very hot indeed. Air temperature was about 33 at the start, 33 degrees. Yesterday, air temperature was 36 degrees in the early afternoon. And I'm sure all indicators are it's going that way again today. But whatever you have outside the cockpit, you have nearly double. So 35 degrees, there we are, confirmation. And track temperature 56 degrees. Now we're getting a little bit of a breath. Before the first of the GT4 sessions, wind speed was precisely none at all, 0 kilometres per hour. So it is picking up, but so too is the track temperature. No surprise. So too is the air temperature. Hot operating conditions. Here is the AMAC Lamborghini with Ben Porter, having taken that over from Andrew McPherson. And really who to watch in this session. Certainly we expect the 888 Race Engineering Australia Mercedes to go better in the hands of Shane van Gisbergen, and expect that to go towards the top end of the field. There's Manuel Metzger. He knows he's got to do a good, solid job. Of course, he does that wherever he goes racing, but he's got championship aspirations to help. He hasn't done all the rounds this year, so he won't take the title, but his teammate MG Choi may well do. And if he can really put in a couple of wins here in Korea for Choi, that will be manna from heaven. So the Solite Indigo Racing Mercedes, again, they're on the outlap. Who's fastest around the outlap? Well, at the moment, the best times are being set by the driver at the front of the pack. It's Manuel Metzger, fastest in Sector 1 and in Sector 2. Well, in fact, in Sector 2 and Sector 3, they're now onto that's their flying lap. They're on their flying lap, coming up towards the end of that long infield straight that runs effectively between turn 2 and turn 3/4. Don't worry, that's not the start-finish straight there. You can see the start grid. That is in front of the spare pits, the national pits.
Philip Hamprecht has actually registered a quicker Sector 2 time than Metzger, so he's going quickly, the second driver out on track today.
Well, for Hamprecht, he's got such an important role to do, leading the championship with his teammates Anand Sathi and Thirukul. So waiting for those first flying laps to be completed, but certainly the 911 Porsche is going to be right at the sharp end of the field. Hamprecht, such a calm young racer. And with only 12 races spread across the 6th round, it's about not making mistakes. On the one hand, a bit like the long lap here, but it's also about delivering with speed and aplomb. And Absolute Racing really getting on top of the Porsches this year. Used to run Audis, but have just taken to Porsches with great deal of diligence, assistance from Porsche headquarters, helping them get these cars set up. And it must be said, actually, though we had Porsche coming first and second in the Spa 24 Hours, of course, the jewel in the crown of the Blancpain Endurance Series and the International GT Championship, very much the dominant car at the front end of the field here in Asia.
I'm expecting Philip Hamprecht to go quickest when he crosses the start-finish line. Went fastest in both of the preceding sectors.
I'm going to go for Imperatori. Let's see, at the end of the first flying lap. Hamprecht goes top, so you're right, but for now, Imperatori in the background. Will the 918 Porsche go to the top of the just? Yes, he does. Out the winner by 0.3 of a second.
Drinks on me.
So again, it's about joining those together. But Shane van Gisbergen, I said he might get to the sharp end of the field. He is the sharp end of the field. 2 minutes 7.729. That's already faster by a second than MG Choi went in the first of the qualifying sessions. I said qualifying 2 would be faster than 1. Already we've got 1, 2, 3. 3 of the top 4 cars are faster than the best time in qualifying session number 1.
Hamprecht, who momentarily went top, has now dropped down to 9th such as the speed
time
at which...
taken away.
Ah, that's
track
why.
limits. He was actually good for third. Frederick Schandorf, a Danish racer in the Lamborghini, really makes that 666 Lamborghini for Vincenzo Sospiri Motorsport go very well indeed. He's fully 7/10 down on Van Gisbergen, but only a tenth of a second down on Imperatori in second place. That was a superb lap from this 888 Racing Mercedes. The Kiwi hasn't done all the rounds. He's competing largely in Australian V8 series, but hugely in demand all around the world. When he can, he comes up to race in Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia, and you can see why. You can see why he's popular. Really flying. So Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim will be looking on from the pit lane, looking and learning and smiling in a way, because it looks though, unless there's a prodigious lap from anyone else, clear by 0.6 of a second. Is that going to be pole? But then again, let's see what happens on their second flyer. And how's Van Gisbergen going? Down on pace in the first sector. Let's see.
Cheng and Asai have both had times wiped off for exceeding track limits.
Frankly, you'll get quite dizzy if you keep looking at the bottom straps on the screen. Number 12 and number 13 both had times taken away. You just mentioned Martin Rump, don't forget, had a second and a first last time out at Fuji, but right now he's one of those that's not quite got it right, but then he has. He suddenly slapped in fourth quickest time. Turn 6 seems to be the corner they're all being pinged for.
Imperatori had a very fast sector 1. He's currently in the final sector, so we may see him jump above Van Gisbergen.
Well, he's closed the gap to 0.1 of a second, 0.139. He stays in second place. Frederick Schandorf waiting for him to put in his flyer, but certainly Martin Rump in that number 12 Absolute Racing Audi showing his hand. Chris van der Drift, we mentioned him before the start of this. He is still top in the Pro-Am class, 8th fastest overall, coming up to complete another lap, but he's 0.8 of a second down overall, 0.9 of a second down on Van Gisbergen's time. But it looked unassailable. It is thus far unassailable. But the 918 Porsche is the one that's getting closest. Alexander Imperatori, the Swiss racer, 0.139 of a second down last time around. He's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. He's got the 88 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes up in front. That won't be a great help because Maxi Goertz is down in 15th. But Goertz, new on board this weekend, joining Jeffrey Lee because Alessio Picariello is away, is no slow driver. He's down in 15th, but he's winding it up on this lap, and I don't think he's going to be an obstruction at all for the Porsche. In fact, he may even set a time good enough to topple it. So let's see the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, number 88 down in 15th place, but nothing representative as yet. He's going to start making moves.
Philip Hamprecht, who had that time wiped out that took him from top position to outside of the top 10, has worked his way up gradually to 5th fastest.
Yeah, it's all about getting that second flying lap to really, really stick. So he's sort of undone the damage because the first flying lap was less likely to be the quicker. Oh, who's making moves? Maxi Goertz just banged in the fastest middle sector of anyone. He was 15th, he's down 16th. When he completes this lap, he could be in the top 3. It's Shane Van Gisbergen, 2 minutes 7.729 seconds.
It was a good first sector he put in as well, so he will leap up the charts.
Well, Martin Rump leapt up having had a track time taken away, and he's gone to the bottom. Now he's had it put back. He goes 3rd fastest. He does alternate laps that count. He's 3rd fastest, and how good is the lap from Maxi Goertz? Waiting for completion. Now to the final corner he goes, down as 2nd slowest of all the runners. Top. And he goes top, 2 minutes 7.442, nearly 0.3 of a second fastest. But I just noticed Manuel Metzger in the championship challenging car, the 97 Indigo racing car, is bottom of the charts. He's been in the pits, he's just done an out lap. He's had times taken away, or did he? Yes, he went up to the top of the charts at the start, then he's had a pit visit. Still just under 6 minutes to go, so time for him to recover. Well, it could be a masterstroke. They could have decided to use old rubber, get a feel, come in, get some new rubber, go out. But either way, he's got to make it stick. He's down in 18th of the 18 GT3 runners. He's behind Ben Porter's time. But Ben's racing in the AM Championship. But right now, it's Mercedes in first place. Maxi Goertz in the 88 Indigo Racing. Sorry, not Indigo Racing. What am I talking about? Craft Bamboo Racing entry. The 888 from 888 Race Engineering for Shane Van Gisbergen. Then the best of the Porsches. They're all Pro-Am runners, the top 4 runners. As I say that, suddenly Marcos Gomez spoils the party. He goes 3rd fastest in a silver lineup. Here we have the 27 Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari. Silver is for a pro driver lineup. So he's taken over from Yuya Sakamoto, and Marcos Gomez getting to grips with not so much the car. He's been racing a Ferrari in the American IMSA series but with the circuit, with the temperature in the cockpit, but good at the moment. 0.7 of a second down on that great time from Maxi Goetz. Goetz might be putting in another quick lap. Not his fastest first sector, second sector, both representative though, both pretty much on the money. So what the drivers don't want to see is Goetz getting any faster, but they also won't want to see that he's not just quick, but he's consistently quick. But here's the car that needs to make the move. 17th fastest at the moment, because no time's on the board for Martin Rump. He should have been good for 3rd or 4th fastest, but he's exceeded track limits several times now. So for the Estonian racer, who sits 5th in the championship, he's got to knit it together in the last 4 minutes. His tyres won't be as sweet, but he's maybe blown his best chances. Manuel Metzger, that's his out lap completed, but you know what he's done? The 3rd of his sectors in that lap. The lap wasn't any good because it was from out of the pits. It was faster than anybody else has managed in sector 3. So if this next lap is a good one for him in the other 2 sectors, and who knows where he's going to go. The target time, 2 minutes and 7.4.
Chris van der Drift has also left the pits, Bruce. He'll be looking to improve upon a time that at the moment sees him languishing in 8th, and he'll certainly want better than that. So eyes on Metzger, eyes on van der Drift. Hamprecht surely has got a little bit more in him. And the top 3 drivers still amateurs, which is fantastic stuff.
Yeah, well, with Maxi Goetz, he's the pro. It's a pro-am pairing, and Van Gisbergen's the pro, and Imperatori's the pro. But it's a pro-am pairing, and that will have a bearing come the race. Who is setting the times? Bang, in they come from Marcos Gomez. 4th place overall, and he's improving around this lap. Who else is improving? Shane Van Gisbergen, fastest middle sector of anyone. That's the critical run through the sweepers. Manuel Metzger, here he is in 97. His fastest first sector, not fastest overall. What he doesn't appear to have is traffic, which is very good news indeed. But the fastest driver on the circuit right now, Shane Van Gisbergen, 0.286 of a second down on the best pace set by Maxi Goetz. But looks like he's taking chunks out of that right now. Is he taking big enough chunks, though, to go top? Clock counts down, 2 minutes 40 seconds remaining into the final. Long right-hand, a little left flick coming up now onto the start-finish straight. Uses the curbs when he races touring cars, that's what they do. Target time 2 minutes 7.442, 2 minutes 6.572. Not just chunks, those were great limbs being hacked off the best time set by Maxi Goetz.
Metzger again has had a time wiped off, that time deleted.
Now, the interesting thing is that one of the laps he did before he went in the pits, I don't think it is. So I think this lap, he's fastest. He set his best first sector time, his best second sector time. This lap could be for nothing. Let's see. And Martin Rump again exceeding track limits as early as turn 3. Here he is, one of the fastest drivers in the championship and one of the best cars, the Absolute Racing Audi. And he keeps on blowing. I think that's his 3rd set of laps, 3rd lap. Taken away from him, so he's going to be hanging his head in disgrace in the pit garage.
It's going to be a very interesting last 100 seconds, Bruce. There's a lot of drivers with a lot more potential.
So it's Shane Van Gisbergen, 2 minutes 6.572 seconds. Maxi Goetz, 2nd fastest. Manuel Metzger now hats off in 3rd, but we think that time might suddenly be removed. For now, though, the Indigo Racing Mercedes, 3rd fastest, fully a second down on Van Gisbergen. That was an astonishing lap from the Kiwi. Who else is making the moves? A handful of drivers now in the pits. Martin Rump has still got to deliver. He's listed as 6th place, 6th fastest now. Certainly his very best times have been taken away, but by constantly attacking, Martin Rump in the number 12 Audi for Absolute Racing has got back into the mix. At least he's retrieved that, and he's going faster still.
Looking at Philip Hamprecht now, 8th
championship
position.
leader.
Yeah.
Fastest of his times in Sector 1, fastest of his times in Sector 2. How much he's going to improve? A lot of times to be found, nearly 1.8 seconds if he fancies pole position, but surely he's got to be good to get at least onto row 2. He's got to. Championship leading car, needs to make sure he's always starting at the front end of the field for the final 4 races. Goes up 1 position to 5th, but he's still 1.4 seconds down on that amazing lap by Van Gisbergen. Eyes on the timing screens. I'm just desperate to see what Martin Rump can do. He's been pushed back to 7th place overall.
Van Gisbergen's gone down to 3rd now.
Van Gisbergen must have had his times taken away, so Maxi Goetz back to the top of the charts. So that 2 minutes 6 second lap has been taken aback, and we know why. It will be track limits, you can be sure of that. So you can see the clock counting down to next to nothing, and it looks like Manuel Metzger has left it just too late to get in one more fly. He's in the final corner. The clock has come down to nothing. He's had a time taken away. All of his times, he's down in 18th and last position. What can this lap be for him? And and Metzger goes up to 5th overall. Talk about seesawing. There he was right at the sweet end of the field, back down to the bottom of the field, thinking, oh my golly, for MG Choi, it's a disaster. That means they'll start the back of the pack for the second of the races, tomorrow's race. But Manuel Metzger just retrieves it with that final lap, half a second off the ultimate pace. He found another 0.2 of a second. He'd been third. Metzger has almost had a time takeaway. Metzger's sitting in going back to the pits, taking the checkered flag, and he's gone from 5th to 4th. It's like a yo-yo. But what we can tell you is Maxi Goetz is at the top of the table. Who's had all their times taken away? Is it the Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari? Marcos Gomez was down in 7th place. No, wasn't his time taken away. It was late improvements. In fact, Manuel Metzger and Frankie Chen Kong Fu in the number 13 Audi moved up to 5th. Things changing left, right and centre. But it's the 88 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, new on board this weekend. Maxi Goetz will have put a smile on the face of Jeffrey Lee. They'll be starting on pole position, surely, for the second of the races. Who still needs to take the flag? I think we've pretty much had anyone to the finish line. Has Philip Pamprek got one more lap to complete? Quite possibly. He's down in 10th. That's the car leading the championship, the 911 Porsche. Here he comes around. He'll be the final car, pretty much the final car to take the checkered flag. Down in 10th. He's 1.084 off the ultimate pace. He gains time but no position, stays in 10th position overall. So late changes in times, but nothing can take away from Craft Bamboo Racing. Pole position with a time that wasn't the quickest in the session, but it was the quickest on a lap that stayed within the white lines around the edge of the circuit. The driver who had been at the top of the charts, Shane van Gisbergen, has to make do with second place, but we know within him he has an amazing time in that 888 Racing Mercedes. But right now Maxi Goetz arrives in the championship, sets the fastest time, takes pole for the second of our two races. That's the one here on Sunday at the Korea International Racing Circuit. 2 minutes 7.442 seconds, so fully 1.3 seconds faster than pole time in the first of the two sessions here in Korea. But job done. But for a lot of the drivers, including the driver of the number 12 Audi, Martin Rump, ended up 10th. He will be kicking himself. Several laps removed. Not just once, you can do it once, but he tried it, enjoyed it so much he did it twice, and I believe 3 laps taken away for exceeding track limits.
There'll be a number of disappointed drivers. I think Bruce van der Drift in 9th, Rump in 10th, Hamprecht in 11th, Rio Haryanto down there in 18th as well. A lot more to give from some of those drivers.
Yes, I mean, with 18 cars and with lap positions changing all the time, you thought you saw a time on the screen, you look down, they've been dropped to the back of the field. Hard to tell, but at the end of it all, Maxi Goetz came on board this weekend to join Jeffrey Lee for Craft Bamboo Racing, has done what you'd expect a pro driver to do, top of the charts by almost 0.3 of a second. Shane van Gisbergen could have been faster, exceeding track limits. He'll have to settle for second fastest in the 888 Mercedes. And Alex Imperatori doing the professional job you expect of the Swiss racer. He puts the AAS Motorsport Porsche into 3rd place overall, 0.4 of a second down. Manuel Metzger with the championship leader, MG Choi, also races for Roloff Bruins, as you see on the graphic. They will have to make do with 4th place, but they were one of many crews that exceeded track limits, and certainly had the team worried till right at the end when Metzger stuck in that 4th quickest time. And almost unnoticed right at the end of the session, Leo Yi-Hong Lee going up into 5th place overall. Top runner in the Pro-Am class is that car on the top of the table, the 88 Mercedes. Top runner in the Am class, let's see who won that particular battle. It was Ben Porter in the number 51 Lamborghini. You can see it in 16th place overall, ahead of the sister Lamborghini from Vitana Motorsport. They're fighting it out in Am honours. And T2 Motorsports, more to come, most certainly from them with their Ferrari running in the Pro-Am class. Arianto, slowest of all, 0.4 down on the pace. But for a lot of the drivers, they'll be kicking themselves for exceeding track limits. And one driver who specialised in that is the Estonian Martin Rump. Quick out of the pits, sadly too quick over the white lines at the edge of the circuit. Some good mid-session pace from the Mercedes, for the McLaren. Keita Sawa ended up 14th overall, but really it was a story of the Porsches, Mercedes and the best of the Audis fighting it out at the top of the time charts. Many runners running a little too wide, and certainly Philip Pamprecht was one of those in the number 911 Porsche. Joint championship leader with his teammate Tanat Setli and Thirical, finding a wonderful flow, but the white lines, you can exceed them with 2 wheels, not with all 4, as a lot of the drivers found out. And just as the form was settling at the top of the charts, Shane van Gisbergen took the 888 Mercedes and banged in several quick times. One of them, which was taken away, was probably about 0.7 quicker than anybody else could manage. The 918 Porsche being pushed very hard indeed by Alex Imperatori, always at the top end of the field. The car you can see in front of him was Maxi Goertz, went fastest of all. Middle point of the session though, it was the 888 car in the hands of the Kiwi, Shane Van Gisbergen, and banged in really quick time. You can see him there exceeding track limits, cutting the curbs just a little bit too much. There he was, 3.5 wheels over the white lines. That's fine. It's when you go 4 over you start to have times removed, but you can see the Kiwi using every little strip of the circuit he possibly could. 911 into the pits, wanted to be higher up, in fact ended up just outside the top 10 overall in 11th place, but the fastest time, Maxi Goertz taking over from Alessio Picariello this weekend, and you can see why the German's in demand around the world. He waited until late on, but it ended up 0.286 seconds quicker than anybody else. Checkered flag was out, and right at the end, Manuel Metzger in the car that's second in the championship came home 4th quickest, so he retrieved it. A hot, busy session, plenty to talk about, but track limits will be one of them. The other is keeping those tyres as sweet as possible. And the third is how quickly the driver can get out of the car and go somewhere cooler. It's been hot and humid here, and a thoroughly enjoyable session. So, looking forward to the first of our races. That will be this afternoon, kicking off at 3:25 when the pit exit opens, and the cars will go racing at 15:40. The grids are set for today's race and tomorrow's. That's it from me, Bruce Jones, and Steve Dawson. Looking forward to the action later on. It's been fun.
It's been fun. It'll be hotter, and should be some good racing this afternoon.
Time for lunch. That's all from us. Thank you very much for joining us. And just to reiterate, the first of this weekend's races at 15:40 local time here in Korea.